office is known throughout the state as being one of the most hardworking, just incredible offices that is doing all of the work that needs to be done around leadership for Democrats in California. I know you've been pulling out like 100 students, high school students, college students. That's what this is about. Let's hear it from students. In fact, I was with the president. He did an event for me in San Francisco a few days ago, and then we had the rally at USC a couple of days ago here, over 30,000 people. I'm sure many of you were there. And we were reminiscing that during the election and that process, you know, I went and campaigned out in Iowa that week between Christmas and New Year, and I walked into the campaign headquarters, and I was very confused because there were all of these kids, these students, lined up around the periphery of the office, and they were just sitting down, and their laptops were open. And I'm like, what's going on? Why aren't they working? And they were working. What they were doing is they were taking that great grassroots movement to the next step of the netroots movement and organizing America and doing the voice that we do uniquely as Democrats, which is being a voice for everyone who has a right to be heard. And as the leadership of our party, all of us in this room have been doing the critical work and have committed ourselves to the next 9 days of doing the critical work of turning out this Democratic slate. I've been doing churches this morning with Jerry and Gavin and Barbara and Tom Torlakson and the whole slate, and we have been out there talking with folks who need to be heard and want to be heard about the fact that their voice matters and their vote will matter when they go to the polls. And you know, my background is that I am one of 2 daughters of parents who met when they were graduate students at the University of California, Berkeley in the 1960s. And my parents met when they were actively involved in the civil rights movement, which meant that I grew up surrounded by a bunch of adult students. I grew up around a bunch of adults who spent full time marching and shouting about this thing we call justice. And growing up in that environment, the heroes, among many, were the architects of that important civil rights movement, and they were the lawyers. It was Thurgood Marshall and Charles Hamilton Houston and Constance Baker Motley, who were taking the skill of this profession of law and translating the passion in the streets to the courtrooms of our country, and doing the important work of reminding folks who unfortunately needed to be reminded of that great promise we articulated in 1776. Which is that we are all and should be treated as equals. And when we talk about the fundamental tenets of who we are as a party, it has always been about that fight for equal rights, for civil rights, for equal access to education, to marriage, to health care, to education, and all of the things that we know everyone should be equally entitled to receive. And as we go into this election, in just the 9 days, we are going to be making some important decisions that will impact at least the next 8 years of our lives. And in this Attorney General's race, I will suggest to you that some very, very, very important and fundamental issues will be impacted by the decision that we make. It will be about deciding who will be the next Chief Law Officer of the state of California, who will have as her responsibility to make decisions about some of the most fundamental issues impacting us. Fundamental, like the issue of whether our children and our babies should be entitled to breathe clean air and drink clean water. And we should, therefore, if we care and prioritize those issues, defeat Proposition 23. Well, first, let's follow the money. It's being funded by a bunch of Texas oil companies, including Valero. You want to know who took a check in this campaign cycle from Valero? My opponent. Let's talk about why outside interests are funding a measure in California. Why do they have their fingers in our business? Why? Because what they know is what we know. So goes California, goes the rest of the country. And when we roll out AB 32, it will be, and prove to be, successful in its goal and intention of encouraging a green tech economy. It will be successful in its intention of encouraging alternative fuels. It will be successful in its goal of reducing reliance on foreign oil. And it will be successful in its goal of, in that way, improving the air we breathe and the water we drink. And it is not about trees and fish, it's about human beings. And they know it, so they want to kill it while it's young in California, and we're not going to let them. My opponent has said he will stand with the conservative attorneys general, mostly from the southern states of this country, and have California, with her limited resources, join in a lawsuit that has been brought to challenge health care reform. Is that what we want in the next attorney general of California? No. Because one must take on these positions, and I know it in my second term as the chief elected law enforcement officer of a major city in this country. We take on these positions in the public trust, and it must be to do the work with the best intentions of those we serve in mind. And is not health care reform just that? Long awaited, much needed, to make sure that we have, all people have access to affordable health care. All people have access to what they need to maintain dignity and to live a life that is a quality life with dignity. We needed that reform because we know women that to be a female should not be a pre-existing condition. And that's what that was about. But my opponent would stand and challenge that. I will tell you other issues are relevant to this race for Attorney General. I would suggest one of the biggest problems, one of the most broken systems we have in California that can be fixed is our criminal justice system. And there must be reform. Folks, on an annual basis, do you know that we release 120,000 prisoners in California because they've served their time, but within 3 years of their release, 70% recidivate, 70% reoffend. It is the highest recidivism rate in the country. Any system with a 7 out of 10 failure rate on its face is a broken system. But when you then factor in the cost, which is from $10 billion to $25 billion a year of that system, in a state that is on the verge of bankruptcy, if you factor in the cost to our public safety, we know this is a system that is crying out for reform. We have created a model in San Francisco, in my office, that is a re-entry initiative that has reduced the reoffense rate for that population from 54% to less than 10%. The United States Department of Justice designated this initiative as a model of innovation for law enforcement in the United States. My opponent at the Republican convention, however, calls my approach radical. He stood before his fellow Republicans, called me a radical. You know what? I am. I am radical in my belief that we can reform broken systems. I am radical in my belief that we do not measure success based on a blind adherence to tradition. I am radical in my belief that we can look at these systems based on what they can be instead of always what they have been. We know we have got a great state. It is the state that all the country and the world looks at and looks to for how change will occur. They look to us as being the source of innovation. They look to us to know that when we as Californians come up with ideas, they usually are good ones and they work. And I would suggest to you that this race that is going to occur with an election in 9 days will be pivotal in what the next phase of our state looks like and what the leadership will be. And we have got to ensure that this ticket wins this election because there is so much at stake that is vital not only to us, but the entire country. And I'll close by saying this. Clearly it's important to the whole country because I learned just 2 mornings ago that Karl Rove put together $1.1 million in an independent expenditure funded by oil companies and tobacco and insurance companies to do attack ads on my campaign in Los Angeles. Why are they doing that? Why is Karl Rove interested in the California Attorney General's race? I would suggest to you because they are very clear about the impact of the outcome of this election on the entire country. Amen. And they're trying to stop it before it gets started. And you know what I'm here to say? Let's bring it on, because we are ready to get it started.